Hey everyone, Paul Johnson, Waconia, Minnesota, and the Laughing Trout Fly Tying Club. Today I'm retying the Copper John. I think what makes this fly so effective is that the slender body and the tungsten bead just helps it sink fast. And then it's got enough flash and things going on that make it just a really good all-around fly pattern. So I'm tying mine on a size 16, 2XL long hook. This is actually an Umpqua U204. It's got a 2.5 millimeter gold tungsten bead. The tail is black goose biots. The body is copper wire, size brassy. The legs are black hen hackle. And then there's a lot going on in front here. It's got some black thin skin with silver holographic tinsel. Say that real fast. Size medium. And then for the thorax, it's got some super bright peacock dubbing. So there's lots of different things going on. It's not an overly difficult fly to tie. So you've got the bead on the hook. Hopefully. All right, get that in the vise. For a thread, I'm using black UTC 70 denier. Again, that's not going to matter too much for a thread because you're really not going to see it. Nice smooth thread base back. And I've got the black goose biots. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put those back to back so that the tips splay out. What I like to do is just get them in my fingers, measure them up, and then I'm going to switch and put them in my left hand, push them up on each side of the hook shank. Just make a wrap thread, make sure I'm okay with that. And that looks pretty good. Maybe a touch long, but we'll be okay with that. Now we're just going to wrap that forward with my tying thread. And all we want to do is make sure that those tails don't spin around on the hook shank and that we're maintaining a smooth base here because we got to wrap that wire. Cut off those excess. So I've got a length of copper wire. I'm going to tie that in on the near side of the hook. You want it to tie on one side of the hook. You don't want it to be traveling around and wrapping around the hook shank at all. I'm just going to make a couple thread wraps from back to front just to give it just a slight taper. Throw a half hitch in there and hang it from my bobbin cradle. The rotating vise on a Copper John is a really nice thing to have. So what you have to look out for here is that hook point. So you got to do the Randy Lage taught me the hula. So just hula around that hook point. If you keep a little bit of tension with this wire to the back of the hook, then it helps you get touching turns as we wrap forward. So just keep going forward. If you have small spaces in there, that's okay. You just don't want big lumps or big gaps. Get it up here. That bobbin cradle out of the way. Secure that wire with tying thread, and then just going to come in here with fingernail clippers and cut that off. So now what's on the outside has to get tied in first, right? So I've got that holographic tinsel. Tie that in. I'm going to come back to maybe the 75% point, maybe the 2/3 point. Okay. Then I've got some of that black thin skin. I'm not real sure why they ever put this in there. I think more so to keep the epoxy from wicking into other parts of the fly. All right. I like this super bright peacock dubbing. You can certainly just use peacock herl for the thorax. It just is really buggy. And just a touch more. Okay. So I want to be right behind the bead. I've got a black hen feather, and so what I did is I stripped the fuzzies off, and then I clipped the center stem out of there, so I end up with this V-looking thing. And I'm going to put it on each side of the hook shank. Come in with a collective wrap of tying thread, and just hold it tight. You can make adjustments. If you want to shorten it up just a touch, you can just gently pull on that feather. Okay, that looks pretty good. Come in here and clip off that excess feather. All right, now I'm going to pull that thin skin forward. Tie that off right behind the bead. And then finally, the tinsel, want to make sure that that stays centered on that thin skin that we tied in. So it should be directly on top of the hook. All right, cut that out of there. And then I'll just do a 3 or 4 turn whip finish here. So I think one of the reasons I kind of got away from tying copper johns when I first started tying it, the shell back or the wing case back would try to use 2-part epoxy, and then you'd have to let that cure and hang it up somewhere and get it to dry. This new UV resin makes that a lot simpler. So I just put a dab of that UV resin from the back, kind of pull it forward. And then I'll hit that with the light. Cure that UV resin. So there we are, the completed copper john. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.